we're moving on to our next story here. Well, it was a crazy night last night in New York City, but I imagine that Eric Adams knew that this day was coming. Last night, Eric Adams was indicted, and this morning they listed at least most of the charges from the federal grand jury. And I think people need to hear this. Now, first and foremost, I want you to hear the speech that he gave, or a little short speech that he gave about his indictment. Everybody's got to hear this again. He knew that this was coming, so I'm sure he was already prepared for this. And I'm going to tell you what I think Eric Adams needs to be, more concerned about. Like, I'm not shocked by this, because I told you last year they were investigating Eric Adams and they took his phone. So he knew that it was only a matter of time that they were going to come for him. Listen to this.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago, just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth. New Yorkers know my story. They know where I come from. I have been fighting injustice my entire life. That fight has continued as your mayor. Despite our pleas, when the federal government did nothing as its broken immigration policies overloaded our shelter system with no relief, I put the people of New York before party and politics.
So let's go ahead and pause here, because many are saying that the reason why he was investigated to begin with is because he started to criticize the Biden administration, and in particular about the migrant crisis. One of the things that Eric Adams did is that he came forward publicly, not just contacting Joe Biden privately, but came forward publicly in the media and said that he has contacted the Biden administration multiple times for help with the migrant situation in New York City. Now, this is after he had made arrangements to give migrants debit cards and to put them into hotels for shelter in New York City and other things as well. And he was like, listen, we're tapped out of resources. We really need some help here. We really need you to come in and do something. And he wasn't alone. My governor, Governor Healy of Massachusetts, contacted the Biden administration. Governor Mayor Wu of Boston contacted the Biden administration, and no response for help. So what's interesting is that people are saying they're only going after him because he spoke out against the migrant situation and said, we need help. They didn't go after Mayor Wu, and they didn't go after Governor Healy. They came after you. Now, I'm pretty sure him speaking out about the Biden administration probably did not help him. Him speaking out against his own party. I told you it's a cult. I told you it's a cult. But I also think that Eric Adams has some corruption going on. So that didn't help him. And it could have been that they knew Eric Adams had corruption going on, but it was something that they were willing to overlook because he was being a team player. But the moment you decide not to be a team player, they're going to come for you. They're going to come for you. And today they started to list off the charges. And I want you to hear the charges. Some of them include bribery, of course, corruption. I mean, they're saying that he is or refused to register as a foreign agent. Now, we've heard that before, right? That was the same accusation that was against the Huru 3 with Amalia Shatella. But they're saying that they have evidence, they have proof that shows that Eric Adams also was using New York City taxpayer money. So let's dive into it. And I want you guys to like think outside the box, because sometimes it's not one way or the other. Sometimes it's not black and white. And sometimes two things can be true at the same time. So it could be true that Eric Adams is being targeted because he spoke out against his own party and he's not being a team player anymore. And he criticized the migrant situation. But it could also be true that Eric Adams was corrupt. Let's get into it.
Mayor Eric Adams has just been indicted on federal criminal charges. The FBI searching the mayor's residence at Grace Mansion in Manhattan just this morning. Adams will be the first sitting New York mayor ever to face federal charges. NBC News correspondent Rahena Ellis is in Lower Manhattan. She just got her hands on this unsealed indictment. Also with us, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Former federal prosecutor Christy Greenberg is also here, who worked for the office investigating Adams. So, Rahema, start us off. As we mentioned, this was just unsealed. I know you are still processing it and trying to get the details, but walk us through what we know right now and the search that happened just this morning.
Yeah, it's historic, as you mentioned, Anna. Eric Adams is the 110th mayor of New York City, but as you point out, he is the first mayor of New York City ever to be criminally indicted on federal charges. I'm going to read some of it right now to you. It says, in 2014, Eric Adams, the defendant, became Brooklyn Borough president. Thereafter, nearly a decade, Adams sought and accepted improper valuable benefits, such as luxury international travel, including from wealthy foreign business people, and at least one Turkish government official seeking to gain influence over him. By 2018, Adams, who had by then made known his plans to run for mayor of New York City, not only accepted but sought illegal campaign contributions.
Pause. So some of these things that they're mentioning about the travel, like the Turkish travel, some of these things happened before he was mayor of New York City. And again, like I said, it's one of those things where as long as you're playing ball, Democrat leadership will overlook some of these things, or maybe they'll even cover for you and protect you. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But once you turn your cheek, kapow, once you turn your cheek, then they're coming after you.
To his 2021 mayoral campaign, as well as other things of value from foreign nationals. As Adams' prominence and power grew, his foreign national benefactors sought to cash in on their corrupt relationships with him, particularly when, in 2021, it became clear that Adams would become the New York City's mayor. Adams agreed, providing favorable treatment in exchange for the illicit benefits he received. It goes on to talk about after the inauguration, he began preparing for his next election, including by planning to solicit more illegal contributions and granting requests from those who supported his 2021 mayoral campaign with such donations. We should mention to you that I'm standing in Federal Plaza, and about a half an hour now, around the corner, we're expecting that the U.S. District Attorney, Damian Williams, is going to hold a news conference, and he had put out just a moment ago, they're going to talk about these charges. Interestingly, in that press conference, in the press release, he did not name Mayor Adams specifically, but it was clear that Mayor Adams was the target of this investigation as things have been swirling around him. You mentioned and showed some video that earlier this morning, federal authorities went to the mayor's official residence, Gracie Mansion. It is north of from where I'm standing, and they took out material from his home. His attorney sent out a statement at that point, and we should share it with you. His lawyer said federal agents appeared this morning at Gracie Mansion in an effort to create, quote, a spectacle again and take Mayor Adams' phone again. He has been arrested. He has not been arrested and looks forward to his day in court. They sent a dozen agents to pick up a phone when we would have happily turned it in. The mayor has insisted that he is innocent of any and all charges that might come against him. And it's interesting, though, because his administration has been bombarded with scandal, if you will, and allegations of illegal activity, in as much as an investigation has been going on now almost from the time he became mayor in 2021. The charges stem from a broad corruption investigation. And they even examined, now we have the indictment says, the mayor and his campaign conspired with the Turkish government to receive illegal foreign donations. As you know, it is against the law for foreigners to participate by giving money in an American political election.
Pause. Receiving foreign donations during his election. You know what's funny? All this time they spent time trying to say that that was Jill Stein, that she was taking money for Russia and all that kind of thing. And it turns out, nah. There was an investigation about that, but it turns out, looks like it was one of your own, Dems. Looks like it was one of your own, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, one of your own. In fact, she may have been the one to blow the whistle. Or maybe Diddy. Because don't you all find it a little bit strange that Eric Adams gave Diddy the key to the city, and then Diddy was arrested and indicted by the federal grand jury of New York? And now Eric Adams is now indicted? Somebody's singing. I don't know if it was Hillary. Maybe it was Hillary and Diddy. You don't know. I got some more news on the Diddy front tomorrow, though, by the way, because it appears he might actually appear in trial, or wants to appear in trial. So I got some more news about that. But all I'm saying is all these people ran together. It's not like Eric Adams didn't know who Hillary Clinton was. It's not like Eric Adams didn't know who Diddy was. And Diddy knew who both of them were. So you can put all these things together. All these things together.
It also examined whether or not the mayor pressured New York City Fire Department officials in order to sign off on a new high-rise office building for the Turkish consulate, despite the concerns about safety problems. And last year, it should be mentioned that one of the mayor's campaign fundraiser officials, Brianna Shuggs, her home was searched and her phone and electronic equipment was taken from her home. The mayor was even stopped in the street, his vehicle, and federal agents entered the vehicle taking his phone and electronic equipment. The home of the mayor's director for international affairs was also searched. The search also involved the mayor's former liaison to the Turkish community of former Turkish Airlines executives. There had been talk that the mayor had gotten an upgrade on his seats, if you will, on airline flights to Turkey. He had gone to Turkey several times. He said it was always on official business. Again, the mayor has repeatedly said, as he heard these charges were about to come down, last night he heard about them, and he released a statement saying that he is innocent of any and all potential charges that would be leveled against him, and he is eager to have his day in court. Anna?
Rahima, please keep looking at this indictment. Come back to us momentarily.
You know what else is interesting about this particular situation is that, yes, he's the first New York City mayor to be indicted, but guess who may try to take his place? That is Andrew Cuomo. So you're talking about removing one corrupt official and inserting another corrupt official. And Andrew Cuomo doesn't need to get back into politics at all. He needs to stay as far away from politics as possible. The fact that this guy is even entertaining this is appalling to me. But Eric Adams' day was coming, fam. His day was coming. And so I'm going to tell you why I don't feel sorry for Eric Adams. We're going to get to that when I show you this next clip, because there were protesters outside screaming at him. Black protesters screaming at him, basically letting him know, you didn't look out for us. You didn't look out for us. And Eric Adams, you rubbed elbows with all the right people that would help you and further your career. Eric Adams put more energy and spent more time standing up for Israel than he did for his Black constituents, okay? Eric Adams spent more time standing up for Israel than he did his own community. And that cannot be said enough. Eric Adams was the one who militarized the police and sicked them in on the protesters. The NYCD police officers dragging kids on the street, pulling kids by their hair. That was Eric Adams who sent them in. It was also Eric Adams who lied to corporate media and said that the kids, the protesters, brought in illegal bike chains, only to find out those bike chains were sold right at the Columbia University campus store. Eric Adams has been heavily against the protesters since day one, and he sent in militarized police to threaten those kids and to crack their heads open. That was all Eric Adams. Eric Adams was applauding the NYPD for killing the subway fare hoppers. Eric Adams was the one who tried to over-police New York City by having NYPD officers even just hanging out in the subway, putting them everywhere. Eric Adams wanted his residents to live under a police state. Eric Adams, when he was approached and questioned about the prison conditions at Rikers, said he had no problem with the prison condition at Rikers. Eric Adams has always stood on the side of the police because he was a cop. And the fact that people voted for Eric Adams, I never understood that. Why did y'all want to put a cop in office? All those people that were running for mayor of New York City, and Eric Adams was the one they chose. And so many people said, oh, he's black, he's going to help out the black people. How many times do we have to see this? How many times do we have to see that black faces in high places don't mean that they're going to look out for black people? Oftentimes, a lot of these politicians look out for their own interests, and Eric Adams was the same. So I don't feel sorry for you, Eric.
With new information, as you have a chance to really soak in what we're learning, I do want to note there are 5 counts in this 50-plus page indictment. Count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, federal program bribery, and to receive campaign contributions by foreign nationals. Count 2, wire fraud. Count 3, solicitation of a contribution by a foreign national. Count 4, solicitation of a contribution by a foreign national. And count 5, bribery. So, Lisa Rubin, these are extensive charges, and it looks like all connected to illegal campaign contributions for the mayor by the Turkish government in exchange for things like luxury travel.
Right. And I would say, actually, Anna, there are some here that deal with campaign contributions, and then there are other aspects of it, the bribery scheme, that seems more like a pay-for-play scheme. In other words, we will give you free luxury travel in exchange for you doing additional benefits for us as representatives of the Turkish government or Turkish business interests. Those trips are detailed on a particular page of this indictment, page 41. There's a chart detailing what prosecutors believe are the trips that Eric Adams and his domestic partner accepted and the alleged value of those trips. But I want to point out one other sort of glaringly obvious thing, but maybe not so obvious to our viewers, which is that this is a 57-page indictment against a single person, Eric Adams. There are no other defendants here, and yet there are lots of other people who are detailed and strewn throughout this indictment, named not by their actual names, but by descriptions. There's a person described as the promoter. There's the Adams staffer. There's businessman 1, 2, and 3. These are people who, if not known to the general public, are certainly known to prosecutors and, more importantly, known to the people who represent them. These are people who are now in the crosshairs of this investigation because what is the first of those 5 counts that you just detailed? It's a conspiracy count. It's a conspiracy to commit the rest of the substantive counts: wire fraud, bribery, and solicitation of unlawful campaign contributions. So there are a lot of people who understood that perhaps they were under investigation, who are not yet in the clear, and whose lawyers are probably on speed dial to them right now discussing what they should do in response to this single person indictment, not dissimilar from the Sean Puffy Combs indictment that you and I were just discussing last week, where he too is the only defendant.
Christy.
And I want to say this as well. Something else to think about here. Eric Adams isn't alone. He's not the only politician that's corrupt or that has corruption going on. He's just the one that they decided to go after. And I want us to all fully understand that he's not alone. he just decided, you know, not to be a team player anymore when it came to the migrant situation. And so they decided to go after him. Some of these charges that they're listing off, I'm pretty sure there were people higher up that already knew about it, but they covered it for Eric Adams. These type of things happen all the time. So don't think that he's the only one out there that's doing some shady things. He's not. He's just the one that they decided to go after. And the community not really trying to have it. And I want to show you something here. Notice here, he was trying to give a speech here, but I want you to hear what the protesters are chanting in just a second. I want you to pay attention to who is standing behind Eric Adams, because I think you're going to see a generational divide. The people who are standing behind Eric Adams, these are the people that have his back. These aren't the protesters. So listen to this.
New York saying that this is not a black day. This is not a black day. This is a youth day. This is a youth day, Eric Adams. This is not a black day. Your policies are anti-black. You are a disgrace to all black people in this city. The things that you have done are unconscionable. You hurt our schools.
So the protester that has the megaphone, he is saying this is not a black thing. So what he's saying is that you're not being targeted because you're black. And he goes on to talk about how Eric Adams' policies actually hurt the black communities. So we'll say it again.
New York saying that this is not a black day. This is not a black day. This is a youth day. This is a youth day, Eric Adams. This is not a black day. Your policies are anti-black. You are a disgrace to all black people in this city. The things that you have done are unconscionable. You hurt our schools. Our streets are dirty. Our children are harassed by the police. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You can shush me all you want, but the people are with us. And this is not a black day. This is a justice day.
First of all, I want to thank you.
Yeah. So I want to point out something that he said there. He said, your policies hurt the black community. And some of the things that he mentioned, he said, you hurt our schools. Remember, Eric Adams was the one that decided to cut funding from education. He said, our streets are dirty. Remember, Eric Adams was the one that decided to cut funding from sanitation. Out of all the cities in the world, I don't think you need to cut sanitation from New York City. Let's just keep it real. And I lived in New York. That is not one where you want to, you know, sanitation. I mean, we're talking about the trash. We're talking about trash, picking up trash off the streets. So you don't want that. Eric Adams did that. Eric Adams was the one that decided that he was going to give debit cards to migrants that came into the city, that, you know, he put them up into the hotels. And from what I understand, that was supposed to be like a temporary solution. But New Yorkers were saying that some of the migrants, they had debit cards, that their debit cards had more money on it than what they were getting for SNAP benefits. So there was conflict there. So again, there was tension there with the residents, and they felt like Eric Adams was doing more for a migrant community than he was for them. So again, as I said before, this is what happens when you have corporate interests and corporations decide to pit the working class against each other. So you had people in the black community that were angered with people with the migrants that were coming in, and you know, and vice versa. So the reality is, Eric Adams did make budget cuts in places in New York City where I feel like should not have been made. Number one, I'm getting tired of people making cuts to education. And as someone that worked in higher ed for years, these kids need resources in those schools. And I got really tired of that. Whether it's the music program, whether it's the art program, you're taking resources away from schools that barely have enough resources for those kids to be successful in the first place. I have a problem with that. We already talked about sanitation. We all know how New York can smell in the summertime when people ain't picking up no damn trash. And I saw it myself when I was there for my birthday. I went to visit for my birthday in March. I noticed they weren't picking up the trash. Now, he said he was hiring someone called the rat czar. How you going to fix the rat problem if you're not picking up the trash? You know, these are things that are common sense. But look who's standing behind him. And this is something I've noticed, guys. It's older Black people, for the most part, that are standing behind him, that have his back. We are seeing a generational divide, and this is something I'll continue to express on this show in particular, is that a lot of us younger Black people, we not really trying to, you know, we're not feeling this, bruh. We're not. And we're more likely to, by younger, I guess I'll say those of us under 50, right? When the year Sailor Goon said them rats pay rent. Oh my God. We're more likely to be more vocal about the system. We're more likely to, you know, call out our politicians. We're more like, we don't care. And what it seems like what I've noticed is like a lot of like older, particularly older Black voters, it almost kind of feels like because they already had their fight, they seem to be comfortable with what they have and don't seem to be willing to fight back against the system. And that's just something I noticed. And it's not everyone. It's not every, you know, Black person over 50 years old or anything like that. It's not everyone. But it does seem like they tend to, for the most part, tend to be the ones to say, this is how it is. Just go with it. You know, things were so much harder back in my day. Yeah. And I get that. And I understand that. But just because things were so much harder back in your day and you feel like things are better for you now, that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't fight back against the system, especially when it comes to the systemic issues of racism, for example. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fight back against the system, especially when one of our own is in office and they're corrupt. So I was never, you know, warm and fuzzy about Eric Adams because, again, at the end of the day, he's a cop. I told you guys how I feel about cops. At the end of the day, he's still a cop. I don't care. You're a retired cop. You're still a cop. And even though he wasn't active duty cop, once he became mayor, what did he do? Put more cops on the street. Put more cops on the street. Let's arrest the homeless people and put them into mental institutions. That was Eric Adams too. Oh, what are you doing? Eric Adams also agreed with stop and frisk. And when I sit up there and I see a Black politician and everybody's thinking that he's going to try to help the Black community, Eric Adams was willing to do more for Israeli New Yorkers than he was for the Black community. It was plain as day. So what we need to fight for Eric for? Eric didn't fight for us. I love this by Dr. Victoria Dooley. She said it best. I can't play the music because copyright, but Dr. Victoria Dooley said, walking into Eric Adams' indictment, watch party like this. You guys got to see this. This is funny. Oh, no. Oh, man. That was a good one.